Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum. We are now doing the third session of the summarized version of the Quran for the month of Ramadan. And in this session, we will start from verse 142 onwards. We did Surah Al-Fatiha and the first part of Surah Al-Baqarah, where the Almighty addressed the children of Israel, in particular the Jews. This address is either direct or indirect. But the idea is to, on the one hand, invite the children of Israel, the Jews and the Christians, to this book and the Prophet, may Allah's mercy be on him, who were prophesying, mentioned in the earlier books. But most of the people of the book did not accept the invitation. Verse 142 begins a new passage, a new description. It is a description of the transfer of status from the children of Israel to the children of Ishmael. And this has been done with the symbolic change of Qibla, the direction of prayers. To begin with, after the migration to Medina, Prophet ﷺ would pray by directing towards the house of God in Jerusalem, Baitul Maqdis. But for 17 months, this happened. And then the Almighty asked him to change the direction and to face the Qibla, the sacred mosque in Mecca. In verse 143, which is exactly half in the number of verses in the Quran, in Surah Al-Baqarah. The surah has 286 verses. In 143rd verse, the Almighty is declaring, وَكَذَلِكَ جَعَلْنَاكُمْ أُمَّةً وَسَطًا. Likewise have we made you, O Muslims, a middle ummah, a group that appears in the middle. Why? لِتَكُونُوا شُهَدَاءَ عَلَى النَّاسِ, so that you become witnesses towards mankind. وَيَكُونَ الرَّسُولُ عَلَيْكُمْ شَهِيدًا, and the messenger becomes a witness over you. Likewise, we have made you a middle ummah, that is, like the children of Israel were given this status, quite the same way, this status is now being given to you. And you are the middle ummah, in that, on the one hand, on the one side, is the messenger who is delivering God's message to you and has become a witness of God's message, his religion, to you. And you, in turn, are expected to become a witness for the rest of the mankind. So it were the companions who have been asked to take up the charge, the responsibility. And as I said, this was done by first changing the Qibla and thus symbolically announcing that the all-important change of status from the children of Israel to the children of Ishmael has taken place. After that, we find that the Almighty is telling believers that the Prophet who is delivering this message to you, he has come as a result of the prayer that was made by Abraham and Ishmael, father and the son, while they were constructing the Kaaba. So in verse 151, the Almighty says, Kama arsalna fikum rasulam minkum. The same way, that is the way the earlier messengers came, and on the basis of the prayer that was made, we have thus sent a messenger fikum amongst you. A messenger for you, minkum from amongst you. Yatlu alaykum ayatina. He recites before you our verses. Wayuzakkikum. And he does your tazkiyah. He purifies you. That is, he achieves the ultimate goal that needs to be achieved for an individual, for him to be successful in the next life. This tazkiyah is comprised of two components. It is purification as well as attainment of excellence, both spiritually in terms of coming close to the Almighty and morally in terms of being excellent in relations with fellow humans. So this potential of being exceptional in our performance, both in our relations with God and in our relations with fellow humans, is there in all humans by design. However, there are obstacles of desire, obstacles of ego, obstacles of overindulgence in worldly matters. So the message of the Almighty delivered through his messengers enables the process of these negative factors to be curbed, to be purified. And as a consequence, this inner potential is realized. That is what tazkiyah is. It is a minimum level of tazkiyah, which if an individual will have achieved, is going to make him or her eligible to enter the all-important world of paradise. So that is what our messenger is doing. He is doing your tazkiyah. وَيُعَلِّمُكُمُ الْكِتَابَ وَالْحِكْمَةِ. And for that purpose, he teaches you the law and al-hikmah, the wisdom. Al-hikmah, according to the Quran, is our morality, which we all have within us potentially, and beliefs. So both are presented, highlighted, moral principles are reminded about, and beliefs are presented through their arguments to enable people to get convinced. So this is what he does. وَيُعَلِّمُكُم مَا لَمْ تَكُونُوا تَعْلَمُونَ. And he teaches you what you did not know earlier. So that's an important verse. After this verse was revealed, the Almighty mentions that the arrival of this messenger and the book was already known to the people who were given books before. But instead of accepting the invitation of this book, and instead of mentioning it to others, which is what they had admitted, they had promised the Almighty to do, instead they concealed the message, which was a huge crime on their part. And that is what the Quran keeps mentioning. It mentions in verse 159, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ يَكْتُمُونَ مَا أَنزَلْنَا مِنَ الْبَيِّنَاتِ وَالْهُدَى. Indeed, those people who conceal what we have revealed in the form of clear verses, clear signs, and in the form of guidance. مِن بَعْدِ مَا بَيَّنَّاهُ لِلنَّاسِ فِي الْكِتَابِ. After we have clarified it in the book for humans, that is in the earlier books, it was clarified. Those who conceal knowingly, أُولَٰئِكَ يَلْعَنُهُمُ اللَّهُ وَيَلْعَنُهُمُ اللَّاعِنُونَ. Such are the people who receive the curse of the Almighty, and they are the ones who are going to receive the curse of those who would curse. Thereafter, we find that the Almighty is now addressing this new Ummah. So, what we have seen is that a new Ummah is formed, it is entrusted with a task. The status of being God's representatives has shifted from the children of Israel to the children of Ismail. Now, the Almighty, in this second part of the surah, is addressing the children of Ismail. It begins its address from verse 163. And not surprisingly, this address is talking about the most significant topic, subject, that is Tawheed, the oneness of God. So it says, Wa ilahukum ilahun wahid. Your God is one God. Let me clarify this issue first. I have seen many Muslims, and particularly in this Western part of the world, that there are many Muslims who insist that we should use Allah for our creator and nothing else. I think it really has many problems. But the biggest problem is that this claim is not consistent with the Quran. The Quran says very clearly, قُلِ ادْعُوا اللَّهَ أَوِ ادْعُوا الرَّحْمَنَ. Tell them, you call him by the name of Allah or the name of Rahman. أَيَّمَّا تَدْعُوا. By whatever name you call him by, doesn't matter. فَلَهُ الْأَسْمَاءُ الْحُسْنَى. He has got all the good names. In another verse, the Almighty says that when talking to the people of the book, you say to them, Wa ilahuna wa ilahukum ilahun wahid. Our God and your God is the same God. So God is in English what Allah is in Arabic. And now Allah and Khuda in Urdu, Khuda in Persian. And obviously, different languages have different words meant to be used for our creator, our sustainer, the one and the only. The important thing is that we should have the right concept, the right understanding of who our creator is and what are his attributes. So, wa ilahukum ilahun wahid. Believers, your God is one God. La ilaha illahu. There is no God, there is no deity except him. Ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. He is immensely merciful, and his mercy is forever. It is lasting. This is the beginning of the description of the Almighty's message for the believers. It is followed by another verse which actually clarifies, gives arguments, evidences in support of the claim that has been made in the earlier verse. So, verse 164 says, إِنَّ فِي خَلْقِ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ وَاخْتِلَافِ اللَّيْلِ وَالنَّهَارِ. Indeed, in the creation of the heavens and the earth, and in the alternating nature of the day and the night, وَالْفُلْكِ الَّتِي تَجْرِي فِي الْبَحْرِ, and in the ships that float on the oceans, بِمَا يَنْفَعُ النَّاسِ, with items, cargoes that would benefit humans. وَمَا أَنزَلَ اللَّهُ مِنَ السَّمَاءِ مِن مَّاءٍ, and in what God sent down from the sky in the form of rainwater. فَأَحْيَا بِهِ الْأَرْضَ بَعْدَ مَوْتِهَا. Then he gave life to the soil after it was dead. وَبَثَّ فِيهَا مِن كُلِّ دَابَّةٍ, and he caused creatures, living beings to spread across. وَتَصْرِيفِ الرِّيَاحِ, and in the changing direction of winds. وَالسَّحَابِ الْمُسَخَّرِ, and in the hanging clouds, subservient clouds. بَيْنَ السَّمَاءِ وَالْأَرْضِ, between the sky and the earth. In all these layat, there are signs لِقَوْمٍ يَعْقِلُونَ, for those who use their intellect, for those who want to understand. What signs? Signs of the presence of and the unity of God. This world, the way it has been designed, we have come to this place with lots of needs. We have so many things that we are dependent upon, that if those needs are not met, we'll not be able to survive. And lo and behold, what we find around us are so many phenomena of the nature that come together in an amazing way to enable us to get what we need. So what we find is that there are heavens, skies, and there is this earth. There is night, and then there is day. Both are important for us to get sleep and for us to get opportunity to work. We have the possibility of heavy ships to swim, to float on the surface of oceans, carrying away cargo that enables us to trade and get important items of consumption from different parts of the world. We need crops, vegetables, fruits that sprout from the soil, for which rain is needed and rain is available. And there is sun whose rays shine is needed, and it's there. And the rainfall enables the dead soil to come back to life and give these crops, these vegetables, these fruits. Humans, animals have spread across on the entire globe, not crowding at one place. And the directions of the winds change for various different positive, helpful, productive reasons. And there is this cloud that we see hanging, dangling between the sky and the earth. All these phenomena, they are a sign for the people who want to understand. There are signs of the fact that they all are amazingly coordinating to cause things to happen which enable us humans to be able to meet our needs. So if somebody has a thinking mind and has good positive intentions to understand what the truth is, there are signs after signs in this world for people to ponder, reflect, and understand. After having presented this concept of Tawheed in a very effective way, the Almighty then moves on after a few verses to describe the Sharia, the law that the believers needed at the time when the Quran was being revealed. Before this law was presented, there was an important verse, a summarized version of the entire Sharia with its true spirit was mentioned in verse 177. This verse is, on the one hand, indirectly talking about the negative attitude of the people of the book, and on the other, is directly telling believers to be positive in their approach and to understand and to follow God's religion in its true spirit. So it begins by saying ليس البر أن تولوا وجوهكم قبل المشرق والمغرب. True piety, true commitment to the Almighty does not lie in the fact that you turn your faces towards east or west. This was a famous dispute amongst the Jews and the Christians. While the Christians would insist that we should face towards the east while we are praying, the Jews would insist that we should face towards the west. And these apparent forms of symbolic expressions of worship were made to appear so important that the real spirit was lost, and the people would fight with each other on these petty matters, petty issues. So the Almighty is clarifying to begin with that the religion that He has given, which His believers must follow, is a religion that emphasizes more on the spirit of the message. Indeed, the external observations in the form of rituals are also important, but they are not meant for people to dispute about them. If you understand something sincerely to be done in a certain way, well, do it, but don't force others to do the same way. So the verse begins from there and says, وَلَكِنَّ الْبِرَّ مَنْ آمَنَ بِاللَّهِ وَالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ وَالْمَلَائِكَةِ وَالْكِتَابِ وَالنَّبِيِّينَ. True piety and true commitment to the Almighty is the commitment of the person who believes truly in God. Belief in God, if it is true and sincere, it would make sure that the person loves and is committed to God more than anything else. It is the foundation, the most important principle of God's religion. To love God and achieve for Him whatever He asks us to go for and give Him top priority. Well, Yawm al-Akhir, and he truly believes in the day of judgment, on the last day. That is, he believes in the reality that this life is temporary and the next life is the real life of the result, permanent, lasting result. So, a true believer is going to always prioritize the life hereafter and would give it more importance compared to this life. It is not an invitation to abandon this life. This life is for us to avail, to benefit from, and to enjoy, but not at the expense of the next life. وَالْمَلَائِكَةِ وَالْكِتَابِ وَالنَّبِيِّ. And he believes in angels, the book, and prophets. Angels are important to be believed in because they happen to be the source of communication between God and the prophets. We humans have been designed in a way that we cannot have direct communication with our Creator. Direct physically. We can't see Him. The angels have been designed in a way that they have both privileges to be able to communicate with God directly and be able to communicate with humans as well. The prophets were chosen amongst humans to be God's representatives. So, when you are taking God's message seriously, then you ought to know this particular aspect of the communication between God and His humans, His prophets. And that makes you feel confident, comfortable. It completes the system of communication. Well, kitab, and they also believe in the book. The Quran uses sometimes singular for all books. All books are from God that He revealed to His prophets. They are the different editions of the same book, the book of the Almighty's will, His expectations from His humans, His creation. Uh, Belief in book really entails that it's God's book that is the ultimate authority in all religious matters. There is no other source which can take precedence over the book of God. It is the criterion, Al Furqan. One Nabiyyin, and they believe truly in prophets. Prophets are the humans who were chosen by the Almighty because of their outstanding moral performance. And they are the ones whose knowledge is pure, whose actions, whose behavior is the role model for all believers to emulate. وآتى المال على حبه ذوي القربى واليتامى والمساكين وابن السبيل والسائلين وفي الرقاب. After the description of beliefs, a description meant to clarify that the one who is really committed to the Almighty is the one who believes properly. It doesn't get involved in petty issues. He's more concerned about proper beliefs, having those beliefs understood and then internalized. And thereafter, when it is done, one of the foremost things that would happen in the behavior of the individual would be that he will spend wealth despite love for it. We all have our needs. We all want wealth. We all love it. There's nothing wrong with it. The Quran describes wealth sometimes as al khair. The word khair is used for wealth. It is obsession with it, overindulgence, in a way that people get inclined to get wealth through illegitimate means, or to get involved in a way that you forget about God, the life hereafter, and are so overly involved in earning wealth that your priorities get seriously disturbed. So God is saying that the one who is truly committed to Him is the one who spends his wealth despite the fact that he loves wealth. He spends it for the sake of the Almighty. Ala uh, ala al-qurba, zawil qurba, ala hub zawil qurba, on relatives, poor relatives, wal yatama, orphans, wal masakin, the deprived, of the sabil, those who are traveling, wasailin, those who ask for help, of riqab, and in giving liberty, freedom to slaves, their emancipation. Uh, these are the different avenues where wealth is to be spent. It starts from close relatives. If they are poor, they are the ones who deserve, and then orphans, etc. Travelers at the time when the Quran was being revealed were also people who were needy. When they would move out from where they live, even though they were wealthy otherwise, they would be in need. And then the Quran goes on to say, وَأَقَامَ الصَّلَاةَ وَآتَى الزَّكَاةَ. They say their prayers regularly and pay zakat. After having mentioned the need for spending wealth on various different avenues, now the Quran is talking about the bare minimum requirements for a person to be a Muslim. He says his prayers regularly and gives zakat. So that minimum requirement has always got to be maintained. However, the ideal is that the believer, the one who has taken God as the ultimate goal to satisfy his commitment to him would require that he should go beyond the minimum requirements to please him. وَالْمُوفُونَ بِعَهْدِهِمْ إِذَا عَاهَدُوا. And those who are committed to the Almighty and are truly pious are the ones who fulfill their commitments whenever they make any commitment. In other words, when you promise somebody to do something, this promise ought to be honored. The Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is reported to have said, "La dina liman la ahda lahu." The one who cannot fulfill his promises has no religion. God's religion is also a promise, a commitment that we make to him. And the believer, true believer, he fulfills his promises. You know, if you have made a commitment that you're going to meet somebody at a certain time, you've got to meet him at that time. It's so very unfortunate that amongst Muslims we have this tendency that we invite people to functions, and it's well known that if it is written on the invitation that the function is going to begin at 8 p.m., it's actually going to begin at 9:30 p.m. What a shame. The Almighty says that believers are the ones who fulfill their promises when they promise. وَالصَّابِرِينَ فِي الْبَأْسَاءِ وَالضَّرَّاءِ وَحِينَ الْبَأْسِ. And particularly those who are sabir, perseverant, who are patient and steadfast in times of economic difficulty, when they are taken ill, their health is not good, and at the time of war, when they are fighting in the way of God, they remain steadfast. أُولَٰئِكَ الَّذِينَ صَدَقُوا. They are the ones who are truthful in their claim that they are committed to please the Almighty. وَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْمُتَّقُونَ. And such are the ones who indeed are God conscious, are muttaqi. After that begins the description of the Sharia law that was needed by Muslims at the time when this surah was being revealed. So the Quran talks first of the sanctity of life and then sanctity of wealth. These are the foremost concerns of Sharia. All life is sacred, and the wealth of people is also important to be protected. In one case, it was the law of qisas that was given. Somebody murders someone else, then the law must take its course, and it should reach the ultimate climax, either in the form of the killer, if he is properly identified to be killed, or if the family agrees to receive an amount in ransom, then that could also be done, blood money. And in the case of wealth, it is strongly advised that a will should be written by somebody who is anticipating his demise. This is something that was later reduced to the category of optional act because the law of inheritance was revealed in details. But then comes the verses that talk about fasting. Verse 183 is talking about the fact that God has made fasting obligatory, like he made it obligatory on the earlier people, the earlier ummahs. And the reason mentioned is لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ, so that you become God conscious. By practicing the discipline of not eating and drinking despite being hungry and thirsty for over a month's period from dawn to dusk, we have been asked to develop within us this strength control that would enable us to follow the commands of the Almighty even when we are tempted to violate them. There's so many evil temptations in this world, and we need to have control on ourselves. So if we believe in Allah that He is there looking at us, and we know that the attractions around us are evil, we'll be able to control ourselves as a consequence of fasting regularly. This is what we must continue to pray during our fasts and even afterwards at night, that the Almighty should give us the ability to be able to control ourselves so that we stay away from the evil that He has declared prohibited for us. After having mentioned that important verse, and this comes right in the middle of the description of fasting of Sharia. Um, uh, this is because of the wisdom that we see in it, that if we were to follow Sharia properly, it can only be done if we have taqwa, if we have God consciousness. And this taqwa, God consciousness, is strengthened, enhanced while we are fasting. Verse 185 informs us that this important act of worship commitment to the Almighty of fasting is done in the month of Ramadan, because in this month the Quran was revealed. So the Almighty wants us to fast in the month of the revelation of the Quran, and goes on to clarify, شهر رمضان الذي أنزل فيه القرآن هدى للناس وبينات من الهدى والفرقان. The Quran is هدى للناس. It's a source of guidance for the entire mankind. وبينات من الهدى. And it is clear as far as guidance is concerned. It's not an ambiguous book. It's not a confusing book. It's not a difficult book. All that you need to have is commitment. If you are committed to understand, even if you don't understand Arabic, well, you should try to learn Arabic. But if that's not possible or not possible at the moment, then you go for the translations. Struggle and strive for it. And you will find very soon that the book is not confusing, is not difficult. So Quran is talking about the fact that we fast in the month of Ramadan because of the Quran. And that is why the Quran is read and discussed more during this month. And we pray to the Almighty that we are able to get the benefit of its message as much as could be possible. So this is the description of Ramadan and of fasting. Then we move on to a list of Sharia uh, injunctions that have been mentioned in this surah in a logical sequence, in a sequence uh, which would make sense if you look at the circumstances of Muslims at the time when this surah was being revealed. So the first thing that is mentioned is Hajj. Hajj was something that came to the mind of believers because uh, the Qibla was, the direction of praying was changed towards the Kaaba. The Muslims had migrated to Medina. There were many Muslims in Medina. And they had a strong yearning to go to Mecca and do Hajj and do Umrah. Quite understandable. But Mecca was, at the moment when the verses were revealed, were in the hands of the polytheists, the kuffar, and they would not permit Muslims to enter Mecca. So that gave rise to the question of jihad. Sooner or later, there is going to be jihad between Muslims, believers, and the disbelievers, kuffar. So there is a talk about jihad. In the middle of this whole discussion, there is a clear mention in verse 213, as I said earlier, that the book of God comes to decide about matters wherein people disagree and dispute. So there is description of Hajj and then the description of jihad. When jihad was talked about, it was quite obvious that there would be a possibility of people getting killed. Some people are going to uh, be martyred, they'll get the status of shaheed, and they will leave behind widows and orphans. So, therefore, there was a mention of nikah. The Almighty encouraged believing men to marry the ladies who have been widowed, to take care of the orphans. But when marriage is mentioned, then there is also a possibility of divorce. So talaq is mentioned, and its law is mentioned in detail. And while talking about the law of talaq, the law regarding the widows is also mentioned, their waiting period, etc. In the middle of this description, somewhere towards the end, the Almighty talks about prayers, salat, formal prayers. So what we find is that in verses 238 and 239, after all these Sharia topics are discussed, we have a description of prayer. The reason is that, as indeed in the case of fasting, in the case of prayers too, you remember Allah in prayers, and you are thus able to have within you the spirit of following His law, His Sharia. So, fasting is mentioned in the middle of the long description of Sharia because it is able to inculcate within us taqwa, God consciousness, which enables us to follow the Sharia. But on the other hand, towards the end of this description of Sharia, we have another act of worship, salat, formal prayer, which is meant for us to remember Allah. That too is mentioned, and the idea is that, it's unless we remember God properly, we'll not be able to follow His law, His Sharia, in its true spirit. So, verse 238 says, Hafizu ala salawat, protect the prayers, your prayers, was salatil wusta, and in particular, the middle prayer, the prayer that happens to appear in the middle of your activities. وَقُومُوا لِلَّهِ قَانِتِينَ, and stand before God devoutly obedient. Uh, the middle prayer was uh, understood to be the Asr prayer. But it all depends on your own circumstances. It would vary from individual to individual. It would vary from society to society. The middle prayer, the concept of it is that in the 5 prayers that we say, there is one prayer in particular that is more difficult, more challenging than others because of the circumstances that we are in. At the time when the Quran was being revealed, the Asr prayer came at a time when people were winding up their businesses and were thinking of going back home. So there was this possibility that they would ignore and forget about this prayer. So it was emphasized more than other prayers. If you are able to make sure that you're going to pray the prayer that comes right in the middle of some important activity involvement, you will most certainly be able to pray others also, which are not quite as difficult and challenging for you. For some people, that prayer might be the Fajr prayer. For others, it might be Isha prayer. But the important thing is that you must say all your prayers on time. And when you pray, قُومُوا لِلَّهِ قَانِتِينَ, stand before God devoutly obedient. فَإِنْ خِفْتُمْ, then if you fear, that is, there is some distraction or fear of the enemy attacking you or something similar. فَرِجَالًا أَوْ رُكْبَانًا, then you can pray on foot while walking, أَوْ رُكْبَانًا, or while traveling, riding. That is also possible. These possibilities are available because the Almighty wants us to pray regularly. We should have no excuse for it. You don't have water, you are traveling, you're taken ill. Instead of doing wuzu, ablution, you can do tayammum, the dry ablution. So this, the Almighty mentions, is what has been allowed as concession, but pray you must. فَإِذَا أَمِنْتُمْ, then if you come in a state of security, فَاذْكُرُوا, then remember God, كَمَا عَلَّمَكُمْ, the way He has taught you, مَا لَمْ تَكُونُوا تَعْلَمُونَ, He's taught you even when you did not know before. Then we move on to, again, jihad, because this whole discussion of nikah, of talaq, of widows, it all appeared because of the possibility of people getting killed in jihad. So the original topic, it returns, and that's what the Quran is, the style is. It discusses a topic and then moves on to some other related topics, and then at the end, it moves back to the original topic where the discussion started from. So what we find is that there is a mention of jihad once again, and this time round, it's the jihad that was done in the history of the children of Israel that has been mentioned from verses 243 to 252, wherein this was Saul versus Goliath. And this description of jihad was meant to give the believers at the time when the Quran was being revealed a reason to feel motivated and comfortable that this has happened before, and God helps those who are devoted to His path, who are devoted to His message. After that, the Almighty mentions in verse 253 the reason why, despite the clarity of the message of the Quran and the clarity of the fact that the Prophet ﷺ was clearly God's last messenger, the Jews and the Christians were not inclined to believe. The Quran mentions that what happens is that because people believe in other prophets, when you're born to a certain family and you're a part of a certain society, and there's somebody who's already been respected, revered, there are emotions. People are very strongly emotionally attached to individuals. And when you exaggerate your attachment, then it is at the expense of truth. You're not able to see in the brightness of your appreciation of one person, anybody else. So Jews, they were so strongly attached to Musa alayhi salam and were so impressed that they started exaggerating. And because he was the one who talked to the Almighty, the Quran mentions, and their admiration for him went beyond limits. And therefore, they neither accepted Jesus nor Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam because of that overindulgence in appreciating, admiring, and loving a certain prophet. This happened with Christians as well because of the amazing personality of Jesus Christ, the outstanding, wonderful miracles that He brought, and the fact that He was born without a father, all added up to make those who believed in Him and were attached to Him, to make Him an object of so much love and emotional respect and admiration that they did not bother to believe in the next prophet who was to come. So the Quran mentions the fact that this is what happens to people who belong to religions and who belong to a different faith, that they are unable to appreciate the later prophets. And then the Almighty goes on to mention the fact that He has a law that He follows when it comes to the question of who is to be guided and who is not to be guided. It's based on merit. And God takes people who really want to believe away from the darkness of ignorance towards the light of truth. Those who don't want to believe, they are taken away from the darkness of truth as much as they have towards the ignorance of untruth, the darkness of untruth and ignorance by shaitan, by those evil forces that take them away because they are not willing. And to describe this reality, the Almighty has given three examples. One of the king who received the message from Ibrahim alayhi salam, Namrud, he's called. He didn't want to believe. Therefore, despite a messenger delivering the message to him, he didn't believe. And the two examples are given. One of a prophet of children of Israel, Ezekiel, who was kind of depressed, and he was wondering whether this state of affairs of children of Israel is ever going to be corrected, improved. He was given a spiritual experience which enabled him to come out of that darkness of depression towards the light of faith and strength. And then this example was given of Ibrahim alayhi salam, Abraham, who asked God, how is he going to raise the dead? And the Almighty asked, did he not believe? He said, indeed he believed, but he wanted satisfaction of his heart. And he was given the experience of birds that he was asked to slaughter and spread across their pieces on all four directions, and then and the Almighty asked him to call those birds to him. When he did, they all came running towards him. And God said, be absolutely sure that God is strong and is wise. The moral of the story is that if you are committed to your faith and you want to know the truth, God helps you and enables you to have strong faith, strong belief, by enabling you to have such experiences which would make you feel strong and satisfied. In the middle of this description, what I missed was in verse 255, the Almighty described his attributes. The verse called Ayatul Kursi talks about the knowledge of the Almighty, the fact that everything belongs to him, the fact that he is the one who is at the helm of the affairs. That's what the chair, the kursi means. And nobody can intercede for anyone except by his permission. And, he is the owner, he is the master, and he is Aliyul Azim. He is lofty and great. May the Almighty enable us to understand his book properly and to be able to follow it as best as we can. If you have any questions, we still have 5 minutes to go for the end of the time. If not, then we end it. Okay, then see you tomorrow, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.